Welcome everyone to our Tuesday night community Kawinda connection. And we're all getting used to that new name, Kawinda, meaning happy place. And that's where we like to gather on a Tuesday night. I do have a few announcements as we get going. I'm going to introduce our guest speaker tonight, who's J Petersen. We're so happy to have him with us. But before we jump into our interview with Rick, we do have our permaculture course coming up this weekend. It's the only one with David Holberton that we are scheduling out this 3/4 of the year. Maybe we'll jump into it again in the next spring. But he is then off to WA. So we're excited this weekend to head out and to Arimba, beautiful property out there for a permaculture course. So not too late if you have ideas that you want to get on property, learn how to grow your own, learn all about the soil, and it's a beautiful camping spot there. Then we also have our bush survival course in Western Australia. And that's headed up by Jared Jose Santana. We call it the basic bush survival course, but last time we actually processed the chicken for lunch from scratch, so anything but basics if you ask me, but that was exciting. And so if you're in WA, that is an absolute treat. You want to get out there, and so register on the website at myselfreliance.com.au. And while you're there, check out the other programs that we have around Jigsaw. That's our morning method, setting you up for a successful day with our morning routine. So that's the next one starts on the 6th of March. So check that out. And then we are gearing up for a very big event on the 29th of April, which is our My Self-Reliance Expo. So if you have a business or you have a product or service, you're a speaker or you want to demonstrate, we would love to have you at our expo and share your gifts and talents with Australia. Love that opportunity to all come together in person and really share the skills and knowledge with each other. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to our beautiful host, guest speaker tonight, Rick J Petersen from Queensland. It's lovely to have you here, Rick, and I've invited Rick on.
You.
Yeah,
It's pleasure to be here.
It's such a treat. So tonight, Rick is he's our expert in bush survival. And I thought it was really important to have you on because for those of us who are in New South Wales, you know, we have some local people, a bit of our go-tos. But if you're in Queensland, I wanted to introduce those in Queensland to Rick because he runs the most amazing bush survival courses. But what caught my eye was the homeschooling aspect that you do. So I thought that's very different. I haven't seen a lot of that. But before we get started into really diving into what you have to share with us and asking all about it, I've got a little quiz. It's a way of getting to know you, Rick. This is 10 quick questions, which you can just fire off. And cool. And this will help us to get to know you in a bit of a fun way.
And these are cold ones too, so I haven't seen these. I think yeah.
That's right. They haven't seen these questions yet, so I hope they're not too tricky for you. All right, ready? Number one. So, are you celebrating Valentine's Day with a significant other?
It's a good question. My wife and I agreed many years ago that we're not real big on the commercial side of things, and I like the idea of I buy flowers when I like to buy flowers, or I give gifts when I like to give, and not tend to be boxed into the Valentine's Day thing, but I definitely gave her a call and I said, I know we don't celebrate Valentine's Day, darling, but I love and appreciate you, and I'm looking forward to you coming home. So there was definitely a bit of Valentine in there, but we're not big on the commercial side of it. Yeah.
Now, for those that weren't in the room earlier, you said before that you are not together. So, and she's 2,000 miles away. Whereabouts is she?
So she's currently in Mapuntaway. And for those that are familiar with that, that's Alice Springs. So she's out there helping out a lady friend of hers to run a day spa in Alice Springs. So she loves the desert. She loves being out there, but it's time to come home. She's had a few weeks out there now, and she's missing her family. So we welcome her back on the 26th of this month. Yeah.
Fantastic. Wow. Okay. And next question, number 2, where did you grow up?
I don't know if I've actually fully grown up yet. I think I've got a bit to go. My roots really are in Tasmania, and this will lead into one of the other questions that I was sort of worded up on about big things coming up. But I was born the son of a lighthouse keeper on a little island off the southeast coast of Tasmania that you might see the Sydney to Hobart yachts going around just before they head into Hobart, called Tasman Island. And that's where I spent the first 4.5 years of my life. So a little rugged island sitting 280 meters up out of the ocean. That's where it started. So I grew up in Tassie. My dad was when we left the island, Dad became a miner underground on the west coast of Tassie. And the wheels fell off the family cart when I was about 6 years old, and myself and my 5 other siblings, so 6 of us, all became wards of the state and were moved around through the foster care system. And I eventually left Tasmania when I was 17 and joined the military. So it's a bit of things in and amongst that childhood there that's pretty interesting childhood, not one that a lot of people would fully understand unless they've been there through that sort of foster care system. There's the highs and the lows through that process, but I feel it's made me a lot of who I am today. So would I change anything? No. So growing up, I'd have to say Tasmania, and then left for the military at 17 and done a fair bit of travel since then. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. This is an easy one. Question number 3. What's your boys' names?
Well, my youngest boy is named Tasman, after the island, and my eldest boy is Arnhem, named after that area out in up in the top end of Northern Territory, known as Arnhem Land. Yeah, so beautiful. It may have been sort of created out there somewhere. Yeah.
Okay, so you think you might have given this one away. So what age did you enter the SAS?
What was the question? Sorry,
what age were you when you entered the SAS?
I was 21. Yeah, so joined the military at 17, served with the 1st Battalion Royal Australian Regiment up in Townsville, up until the stage where it was about time to either get out after doing your 3 years of signed up service or stay in and do something different. And up until that stage, I'd never heard about a unit called the SAS, and a lot of my workmates were sort of talking about it. And there was a documentary came out at the time, actually, filmed by a guy called Simon Ackerman, and he won cinematographer for the year for the filming of it, but it was called Battle for the Golden Road. So I must have watched that a lot of times, but it was a documentary about getting into the Australian SAS. And that I suppose ignited something inside of me that I felt I needed to be tested. Going through my rocky childhood, one of my mentors, I guess, tougher mentors in my later years of being a rebellious sort of child. A lot of it was about making sure that I proved to him that I would eventually do something with my life, because at one stage he had me by the shirt up against the house and sort of going, you need to grow up, you've got a chip on your shoulder. And no, he's a good man, but he was a lot of my inspiration, I guess, for pushing on and doing something more serious. So done selection in 1986 and got in there.
So that leads me to the next question. Would you recommend it for these days, people joining the SAS?
I don't think it's so much about necessarily joining the SAS. I'd certainly recommend the joining of a military that anybody wanted to. I'm not against that. My boys have always, well, up until about their teenage years, never really had much of an interest in the military. I think they probably didn't know much about my background either. It wasn't that I didn't share with them, but if there wasn't a level of interest or them asking questions, it's like, oh no, when they're ready, I'll share with them a bit more, And yeah, I think they look at it now and sort of think, yeah, no, it's good to have a dad that's had that experience, and yeah, but yeah, I'd recommend it. It's definitely another layer of, I suppose, professionalism. It's a unit where you definitely get to do a whole array of skill sets that you probably don't do in the general regular army. So yeah, definitely stuff that you like to carry forward into your future. Hence the survival skills for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. What's your favorite bush tucker?
Favorite bush tucker. Up in the Northern Territory, there's a plant that's commonly known as gargle is its traditional name, and it's from a plant from the Grewia rutucifolia. It's got a nickname of dog's balls too, and if you see that, you probably know why. They're two little nodules that look a little bit like dog's balls, I suppose, but the little nuts inside those, sentimental in a lot of ways, but I really like that as a little tasty treat. Yeah, gargle.
I say that 3 times fast. Excellent. Where's your favorite place to camp with family?
If I reflect back, I'd probably say somewhere around Walker's Creek, which is up in the Northern Territory in and around Litchfield National Park. Larrakia country. There's a beautiful little walk along a little babbling creek that goes for kilometres, and you pull up there, and back in the day, you certainly wouldn't have seen anybody for a couple of days. So I think our whole family was probably nuded up for 2 or 3 days, in these quiet little spots next to a creek. It was really a beautiful little spot. Probably a bit busier with tourism now, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I can vouch for that. Litchfield National Park is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
Been a few years since I've been there, though. Okay, number 8. What is the biggest injury you've had while in the bush?
Sort of includes sort of military. I haven't had a lot of injuries, surprisingly.
Oh, that's interesting.
I took a pretty serious sort of fall off a mountain in New Zealand when I was over there with the SAS regiment. We were doing some snow and ice work with the Kiwi SAS, and we were doing what was known as sort of escape and evasion training. So we had to make our way up into this mountain range. We didn't have to, but we chose to go to altitude to potentially get away from who was tracking us. And eventually the weather changed, and we got caught in a sort of snow blizzard up the top. And a few of the patrol members became snowblind, but we tried to take a bit of a detour down over part of the steeper part of the mountain range, and whilst the others lost their footing and slid for several hundred meters, my pack decided to catch a bit of a rock as I was sliding and put me into a cartwheel. So I think I had about 400 meters of cartwheels with a backpack on my shoulder and a rifle strapped to me, and a few cracked ribs and dislocated shoulder that disappeared behind my back there somewhere. That's probably it's probably one of the memories that comes to mind, of being battered up a little bit by not really the bush, but the snow. Yeah.
Wow. Well, maybe hopefully the snow broke your fall. Do you have a funny memory?
Funny memory.
Maybe while you're on one of your courses, and maybe one of the participants, or
there's been a few. I look back at it and probably think it was a bit funny, but it might not have been funny at the time. You'll probably realise why. So I was on a survival course up in the Chichester Ranges of Western Australia, so the more towards the top, just before you get into the Kimberleys region, and we were walking down the Yule River system. We just had about a week and a half of instructional work in learning survival skills. This would have been probably 3 months after joining the SAS regiment. And so we're learning these skills, and then we had what they referred to as like the test of objectives, where they will have to say you have to go from here to this point here, which is about a 6-day walk. You have to avoid being detected. You don't get to keep your normal clothes. You get sort of stripped off, rubber glove, and just making sure you're not taking anything you shouldn't take. And then they give you back about 2 meters of hessian material, and then you have to fabricate whatever you're wearing for the clothing, and a hat. And I think we were given a knife and possibly a rifle for safety purposes, but only in case we got charged by a bull or something. And so we were making our way down the Yule River system, and when it came to lighting a fire at night, it was like quite warm during the day, but very cold at night. And so we decided to light a fire in the gravel bed inside the river, which the general rule is you don't light fires in rivers up there. You've seen what the Fitzroy River can do when floods come down. But we also didn't want to get detected by being out in the open, so we're under the paperbark trees. We dug a trench, and then we covered it with gravel and rocks and things of probably about 200 mil. And we laid down on that at night time to try and keep ourselves warm. And there's four of us in the particular patrol. We were spooning each other during the night, trying to keep warm, and all rolling over every so often because our backs would be warm, and then you'd roll over and your back would be cold and your belly would be warm. But one of the guys, we'll call him Gary, well, his name was Gary, must have been rolling a little bit more than what we were, and his hessian clothing, which is not really fire retardant, caught fire. Well, it was smouldering, and as he got up to try and put it out, it started burning. So he started running, and of course you add oxygen to a tinder bundle and it burst into flame. So he was running around the riverbed on fire. We jumped up and were running after him in the dark, tripping over logs and things, trying to get him to stop, drop and roll. But he ended up getting evacuated out after that. But yeah, it's probably hard to see the funny side of that, but we look back now and we probably all laugh. Yeah.
Wow.
He's a little bit accident prone, young Gary. Yeah.
Well, we can already see some of the things that you've done. We're glad you're on the show. So, and then the question number 10 is, what's the next big thing that you're up to?
Yeah. Okay. So, in fact, if you can pull up an image there, Kelly, there's an image of a solo island somewhere there. If it works out, great. If you can bring it up. If it doesn't, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But there's an island that sits off the southeast coast of Tasmania, known as Tasman Island. I mentioned it before, that one of my sons is named after. But I've got the opportunity to head back to that island. Now, it hasn't been manned since about 1976, I believe, when the island became automated. But every so often there's a very small contingent of volunteers known as the Friends of Tasman Island to go over and do a little bit of maintenance work. And yeah, so that's the island there. Pretty spectacular island. Those cliff faces there are around 280 to 300 meters high. We were the only family that lived on the island from 1963 to 67. So I can't say I've got prominent memories of being on the island, but my memories are probably half clouded from seeing some of the early black and white images of me feeding the chooks in the chook yard on the island and things like that. But some horrendous stories of the wind blowing rainwater tanks, 3 of them actually, over the period of time we were there, blowing them off the island and then toppling 300 meters to the ocean below. So that's a 25-second exposure. I took that one from a place called Perdition Ponds. If you do the 3 Capes walk in Tasmania, one leg of that walk will take you out overlooking Tasman Island, as you see there. And it was a 25-second exposure, so it looks rather milky around the island and somewhat surreal. But it's a rugged area of Australia. When it wants to be, it can turn it on. So I get to return to that island after 55 years it'll be when I left the island, and I get to return about the 2nd of March. I get to be a volunteer and head back over, not just myself, but with my older sister, Tanya. She's my last living sister, and 2 younger brothers who are twins. We all get to head over there and do some volunteer work for the FOTI group, the Friends of Tasman Island. So there's invasive weed species over there. There's a Californian thistle and a few other things that they're really trying to get control of. And the biosecurity measures to be on the island are quite stringent. There are no cats no longer on the island. They had an issue with cats for many years, but they've all gone. There's no rodents, no rats or mice. So it'll be a powerful time. That recollection. I'm wondering if I'll have elements of flashbacks to childhoods or images. I'm half tempted to have a hypnosis session to see if there's things that I can do that can bring back times and places. But you might notice on the screen the very white dot as you look at the image. It's on the left hand side. It's like a shining white dot
over here.
Yeah. So that's a little shed at the top of the haulage way. So if that mouse headed from there diagonally down to the left, you'll see a tiny little island off the coast. That's where the cable car went down to. And so there's another image on your the ones I sent you there, Kelly, that shows me at 1 year old in the cable, in the a bit like a hot air balloon basket sort of thing. I don't know what it was made out of, but that other image is myself when I was about one. With my sisters, leaving the island. It's a pretty, and it was a part of a documentary that was filmed by the ABC back in the, obviously in the 60s, with those ABC radio voices where it's like, watch now as the lighthouse keeper descends the island. And it's quite incredible. To think the ABC actually going to do a short story while we're on the island about having all the four siblings back again. So, that little good-looking rooster in the centre there, is myself, and that's my my sister Tanya. She'll be on the island as well. And
wow.
So
wow, fascinating.
incredibly fortunate and grateful for the opportunity to be heading back to the island. There's definitely been something that's been in my wish list for a long time, but probably never knowing how it would ever come about with the pretty strict rules of getting on the island.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Wow. We could just spend the next 20 minutes just talking about that, couldn't we?
Yeah. Yeah, it's incredible.
Now, you did send me through some amazing photos. So if there's something there that we should spend time and stop and talk about, we can do that.
Sure. Yeah.
So, but I did prepare some questions to ask you.
For sure.
And along the lines of family and bushcraft, and knowing that you've had two boys who you've taught all these classes to. So if you're not aware, Rick runs classes for women and for fathers and sons, for homeschooling groups. And so I love that you cater for all different genres and age groups and different ways of bringing people together to connect in the bush and learn these skills. So my question then is, since we live in a time where we have everything that we need at our fingertips, why do you think it's important for families to learn bushcraft skills?
Good question. It seems to be as we move down the technology path, and technology is not a bad thing. I'd be lost without it in a lot of ways. I think it's a part of our future, whether we like it or not. You might as well embrace it and just monitor how much it controls your life potentially. Even myself, I've got to watch it. But we seem to be, as a society, just moving further away from nature, where it becomes, that's nature and we're humans, and they're losing that connection. You just only have to go sort of a bit of a bushwalk through a bit of a bush path with somebody that you're not really familiar with, and just hear the simple ways they react to things, or they hear something move in the bush, and it seems like they think everything is out to get them, and we've just lost that connective, culture where we can go out and embrace it and be amongst it. I mean, there'd be very few children today that would be able to identify the difference between a eucalypt or a bang. Maybe the homeschooler groups probably do, because they tend to be out in nature more, but not a lot of children know a lot about our vegetation or our floral emblems and things like that, or habitats and animals and characteristics. And so I think that getting people back to that and and in some cases, for a lot of the men, they've lost that connection that their forefathers would have known, the ability to be able to, you know, set a simple trap or manufacture a snare for possibly snaring an animal. And once that skill's lost, it's not like you can really very easily come up with the thought process of like, oh, if I do this, this, and this, that should work, and I'll make a snare. You know, it takes a lot of practice to set a snare properly, and you need to understand the animal, you need to understand the environment and things like that. And we've moved so far away from it that it's, it is a needed skill. I feel that everybody should have that ability to be able to be self-sufficient to a degree. You know, it's not like you're going to go out there and thrive and be putting on weight. You know, it's even for a seasoned or skilled bush person, you're generally going to lose weight out there. It takes a lot of energy output to be able to keep that calorie intake. Yeah, it's but yeah, certainly in and amongst society, it's a skill that's sadly missing.
And you touched on, you know, that the passing down those skills and things, and we think of the role of the father as being the protector amongst his many roles. Do you think that the father is still the protector, or do you think things have changed?
I do think that role of a father is a protector, and I think it is changing in the sense that we, you know, the conversation will often come up about like toxic masculinity and things like that, and it can be viewed by some, if you're strong in your belief that you need to protect your family and that you need to be able to provide and you need to be able to do skills that require what typically would be a masculine task. It might be working on engines, or it might be operating a chainsaw, or being capable in the bush to be able to identify edible foods and set a snare or trap. I guess they're seen as being masculine sort of skills historically. But these days, it does seem like you're encouraged not to make the assumption that that's a masculine skill. It's a confusing time, I guess, for many people, and it's not that difficult to upset somebody by making a generic comment that it's like, okay, no, I do need to be mindful of how I phrase things.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. And you know, women are the first that are going to say, hey, if he can do it, I can do it too. Even though, you know, we like to feel like we want to be looked after, but we also like to think we can do everything. So going back to your experiences in the SAS, so the things that you experienced growing up, what aren't kids experiencing today that they're missing out on?
A big one that comes to mind, and it's probably as a catalyst, I suppose, of my childhood, is when Dad took off when I was 6. He headed to Mansfield in Victoria to work in a mine, and Mum took that pretty hard. And unfortunately, alcohol had a fair bit to do with her, I suppose, coping mechanisms, and that would be detrimental to her losing a family, which, you know, she loved and respected us, but it was a struggle. And that, not growing up with a solid father figure around me, I had foster fathers, some of them somewhat dubious, but having the importance, or that guided mentoring of a solid role model through your life that's there for you to, you know, not only share your skills, but to be trusted, I guess. You know, it almost seems like it doesn't matter what field or career path that people are now, it is something that trust is lost a lot. And it can even be amongst, you know, Christian or religious circles that we're seeing a lot of that. And so where do you look for trust these days? You know, that can be problematic. And so I think that, for me, to sum that up, I think it's about what's missing out on that father and son time to develop boys into good, strong men. I see a lot of the younger culture, and I'm somewhat gets under my skin when if you don't know if you're familiar with what they refer to as the Eshe culture of the younger teenagers and things, where it's got a certain set of characteristics about it that I don't see as being conducive to raising good men. yet it seems cool for them to be essays. I think it's problematic. And I'd like to think that they get some mentors around them to say, it was fun while you were throwing the funny phrases and things like that. But if it takes you down the wrong path of life, then it's going to be a fair challenge to come back on once you move down a wrong path of conducting yourself or abusing substances or being involved in activities that are not conducive to good core values or moral system there.
Do you see attitudes change when you take a father and son away on a camp over a weekend? Do you get to witness that? Do things change over that time, or do you feel like it takes a little bit longer? Or do you keep in touch?
It can depend a little bit on almost how far down a certain path they've gone. I do team up with another guy, John Rutter from Authentic Steps, and we run a rite of passage program. He's got an awesome program and great philosophies in amongst it as well. And we'll team up, and I'll do the more bushcrafty and the physical elements, and a bit of my headspace passed into that as well. And I think those ones, once they get it as a complete package, the physical, the allowing emotions to become to the surface and be physically tested, then you break through an element of barrier where you can get through to some of those decision-making processes when emotions come up. Unless you can hit some of them emotions by physically pushing somebody beyond what they thought they could do, often it's superficial. It's just information. They've heard it all before. Dad says that all the time. They're just having a go at me. They don't respect my privacy. They want me to do this and this. And it's like it doesn't seem to sink in as being valuable information that's been given to them until sometimes they hear it from somebody else after they've had an emotional breakdown because they've got to the top of a big hill with a heavy pack and they're ready to throw it in.
Having it's how you turn the diamond, in the rough, isn't it? Go through that.
It's got to be given as challenges. Needs that pressure.
100%. So now, besides the father and son camps, you provide the women's courses, the homeschooling program. What's the common thread between all of those programs? What is it that the very basics that you want people to understand before they leave the bush?
I guess it would always come down to trying to find that balance between, I think at this one, I guess I was raising my boys, it's like trying to find that balance between being capable and confident out bush, but also being connected, that the bush is not there to be exploited, I guess. So it would irritate me greatly if I saw my boys with a machete and they were just hacking into a tree for the sake of it. It's like that they wouldn't do that because they understand that you work with nature and not against it. If you can move vines and get through without hacking and slashing your way through, it's got to be a respect thing both ways. I very much feel very grounded when I'm out there. And if there's a great big spider web there with a beautiful golden orb in it, hey, that's her area. Let's move around. Let's have a look at her. Let's watch her work her magic for a while. And then we'll move on and be the better person for having witnessed that incredible feat, and you'll come across that every time you're out in nature if your eyes are open. It's a bit like the old, sometimes you hear, but you're not listening. And it can be the same. You can see things, but not take it in until you slow up a little bit, take a few deep breaths and understand that you're a part of all this. It's not nature and us. We're a part of it.
I love that, because when you learn that in nature, having that respect and of the power of nature, you can definitely take that back into, everyday life and start to see things that power of observation too, can really start to shift your awareness and your mindset.
I think it's also a mindfulness thing. And I think I've developed it. I definitely had a good element of it while in the military, but possibly through different reasons. Like if we were doing patrols and we had in training, we might have another patrol who's chasing us up or whatever through the bush whenever we would camp. When we would leave the next day, you're literally scrutinizing the ground that you're over to see whether you've left a footprint, a leaf or a corner of a sugar ration, piece of paper or something that could be detected, because apart from them getting full right to chase you down if you've left a sign, but it's about being able to move through nature and not leave a detrimental side to it, or even be witnessed in some cases. So I think it's great, and the kids love that too. They love to be able to hide and play and be in and amongst a bush environment, and that cam and conceal and become part of that bush, because they love wearing their cams and things like that. And yeah, that's really good to see them understanding how they fit into that, and teaching that path of respecting the environment that you're in. It's all transferable into everyday life. You know, if you wouldn't leave rubbish out in the bush, then why would you drop it on the streets? I'm a shocker for it. If somebody pulls up in front of me and they throw a cigarette butt out the window, I get out and it goes back into their car, and I don't care how big they are. I'll get punched up one day, I'm sure. But it's like, you don't do that on my watch. You know, I'm very,
Yeah, I love that. It's
I'd
great
like to say I do it
education.
respectfully, but I don't really. It just goes back in their car, and it's like they go, "Oh, it's going to burn my seat," and it's like, why would you have thrown it out the window? That's your issue.
Yeah, I love that.
People
So
dropping rubbish.
now, so you're in Queensland. Do you feel like that that survival courses around Australia are unique to their own area? If I did, can I apply what I learn about botanicals in Sydney to Queensland, or is it quite different?
That's a really good question. One of the better questions I've heard in relation to, and you can extend that to say, so would it still be valuable if I was on Spitsbergen Island in the Northern Hemisphere? It's like, when it comes to the priorities of water, shelter, fire, food, and rescue, that's generally clumping them together. Many of those aspects are very relevant anywhere on the face of the earth. It's just the order would change around. Fire is going to be far more critical in a snow and ice environment, because if your hands get cold and they get numb and you can't build a shelter, you've got to get fire going early. And then that's the foundation for everything else. Here in Australia, subtropical environment here this evening, I could be out there and be wet, but I'm not particularly cold. It might be that the shelter takes a higher priority to allow me to get the wet clothes off and have a dry night's sleep. And of course, that's going to then expend water. So I'm going to then need, to rehydrate. So water and shelter will always be higher than fire. But then fire can sterilize that water. It can cook your food and make it so much more edible. Especially if you're looking at food, which is well down the priority list. If it got to the stage where you're out there for a week and a half and things had turned pretty pear-shaped and you needed some sustenance, then certainly if you managed to catch a bandicoot or a rat at your campsite or something, then you'd want to be cooking it. And if you haven't mastered how to get a fire going, then you're taking another backward steps, and emotionally and mentally that can be hard. That can take a real knock to your ego. And especially if it's got a small parasite in it, which could easily be cooked out, being well cooked. I think it was on one of the series of Alone in the Northern Hemisphere. A friend of mine through social media, Donnie Dust, I think he's got about 10 million followers on TikTok or something. But he came off that show after 1 week of the rat not being cooked properly. And as a result, it's like, it's important out there. You can't make small mistakes turn into big problems, and that's often how people get themselves stuck. But on your aspect of transferable through Australia, just about every aspect of it would be almost identical and applicable. Food is a different one, and it's down that list for a while for a reason. Is because it is lower in the priority of needs. However, it got to the state, if you needed it, you would find some plants that grow in Western Australia that would grow in other parts. But then from, say, somewhere in New South Wales to here, you'll have lomandra grasses, and you'll have banksias, and you'll have different bush plums and things will grow up through there. There's generic plants that will cover the subtropicals and up into the top end. You go to somewhere like Tasmania and then Northern Territory, probably not. There'll be different plants that might be of the same genus, and coincidentally, they both have an edible fruit that's edible. But for the plant side of things, if any one thing can bring you unstuck more than anything else, would be that belief system that, well, I saw the birds eating that berry, I'm going to take a few of those. If they can eat them, I can. And that's completely not right. You know, you could be in the hurt locker with diarrhea and vomiting and stomach cramps, and your emotional well-being would be shot, you know, because you're already dealing with the fact you've made some serious mistakes to get you in that situation. You would escalate it by eating something that you're not sure of. So yeah, unless you've got perfect ID on a particular plant and you've eaten it many times and you can and you know a bit about botany, it's like, absolutely, yes, that is Grewia retucifolia. Absolutely, I can eat that. I know that. I've got the experience with it. Whereas edible things like it might be, you know, rodents or crickets, or generally most insects, or it could be reptiles or mammals. They're all edible. You know, there's nothing there that's going to really bring you unstuck. Maybe watch out for caterpillars. You get some of those fine hairs and they get in your throat, then you've got an airway issue. An airway just about trumps everything. So if you're doing a transpiration bag, a clear plastic bag around a branch to get it to transpire water if you needed water, and you missed seeing a hairy caterpillar in there because you didn't shake the crap out of the bush first, then those tiny hairs could be swallowed in the water that you so much need. And as a result, your windpipe then, or your throat, starts swelling, and now you've got a serious issue of possibly, you know, an obstructed airway. So everything interties, you know, but food, keep it well down the list for the reason of it's not your highest priority. Long-winded sort of answer to your question there, but very relevant, I feel.
Yeah, no, great answer. Really great. And I'm wondering if there's anyone in the audience who would like to ask a question, because there's so many, you've touched on so
or
many
even
things.
if there's anybody that's had an experience of eating something that they've thought was something else too, I'd be curious to know that.
Yeah, because there's so many plants that have a copy look-alike that's poisonous. That you have to
There's
really
some
know
general
difference.
rules. General rules of like, you know, if you've got white sap, be careful of it. But then all of our figs growing in Australia all have edible fruit, and they all have white sap. So there's definitely exceptions to the rule, but there's some guidelines, you know, and you've got to look at the nutritional value to it too. If you come across a little bush and it's got little red berries and there's not a lot of it in the area, why would you risk taking one or two? You really want to find something that there's lots of fruit there, and then do some serious testing on that, and making sure that you've definitely got a good ID. And yeah, that's a lesson all in itself about potentially taking that decision to attempt to eat something without going through a stringent test process with nothing else in your stomach. Yeah, it's a whole process in itself. But yeah, I'd love to open it up to the other guys, and if you've got any questions, for sure.
Yeah.
There'll
And
be
we
a lot of
also
experience in there, I'm sure.
we also have some photos. So is there any photos that you want me to pull up that you want to talk about?
Just do a quick flick through the family, if you like. So you can quickly meet my lovely wife and my boys, and then there's probably a couple of the military shots there that you can bring up. Yeah. Next one after that. Yeah, it's my lovely wife, Neryl. She's out in the desert. Yeah, she'll be home on the 26th. It'd be lovely to see her again. It's been about 14 weeks away. Yeah.
Wow. That is a long time away from each other.
We spent most of last year up around the Whitsundays working up on Naro country out on Long Island. And so then she'd done a stint to the desert, and I came back here to run a few programs. And yeah.
She's in a community then?
No, she's actually in Alice Springs itself. But we have spent several years out in Yalara, so at Uluru.
Yeah.
Excuse me, clear my throat. And I worked at Mutijulu, which is the Aboriginal community at the base of Uluru there on the northeastern corner. I was there for a couple of years with the Anangal people, the Pitjantjatjara-speaking Anangal people. So we both had a fair bit of time out there. Neryl would work with the Indigenous ladies, the Kungas, at the Walkajara Art Gallery, and assist them with their paintings and canvases and things too. Yeah.
Wow, she's a very clever lady. And these are your boys?
Yes, yeah. So, the one next to my wife there, he's the eldest son, Arnhem, and Tasman is the other son. He's over in Western Australia at the moment. Yeah. So they're both professional videographers and do a lot of work with Nitro Circus, filming all their motorcycle stunt riders and all that sort of stuff. And Yeah, they love their action. They love getting out and doing adventurous things. And I'd like to think they can do it. Yeah, the Tasman, the one guy there next to me, yeah, he went down a crevasse in Japan when he was over there snowboarding a few years ago, and shared with me how he managed to get himself out of a crevasse. And Arnhem shared with me a time where he got off track down near Mount Wellington when he was exploring up the mountain ranges behind there, and managed to get himself out. And he goes, "What would Dad do?" So yeah, it's good to know they've had a couple of challenges and being able to work their way through it. Yeah.
Oh, extraordinary. And look at this amazing sunset too.
Yeah, just taken near Kings Beach in Caloundra. Yeah, yeah. So
Beautiful.
there was probably some other military shots there. Oh no, there's the boys. That's up on Mount Nagungun in Gubbi Gubbi country up here on the Sunshine Coast. Yeah, and that's Mount Coonaran directly behind us, and then Mount Biawar behind that again. There's an really powerful Jinnaburra story about the formation of the Glasshouse Mountains, and probably not my spot to explain that story, but it is one that you can probably look up, a story that's been approved by the Jinnaburra people to have on signage and be to the public. And that's one thing with a lot of the Indigenous stories, that it's not always our place to tell that story. And it could be about the night sky looking up at the Seven Sisters or Pleiades. There's a story of Kunkalang Kalpa in the Pitjantjatjara language and how it moves along the country as a songline. And it's not our story always to share that relevance of that story with people unless we've been given permission. So to a degree, I feel much the same with Gubbi Gubbi stories and Jinnaburra stories. Yeah, but powerful country, and it's got powerful song lines and stories through it all.
It gives us more reason to get out there and get amongst it and learn it for ourselves
Yeah,
firsthand, isn't it?
yeah,
It's all
always
about.
take that time to think of the thousands of years that have passed. That this was and still is, important country. Yeah, for the people. Yeah, I look pretty mean there, don't I?
Is that
I
you?
look like
Look at
I
you.
look like I've got a bad attitude or something. Yeah,
Wow. How old do you think you were there?
I would have been 23, I think. Yeah, that would have been about 2 years after I had got into the SAS. So the selection process goes on for quite a while. The course itself lasts for about a month. I started off with about 148 soldiers were on my course, and 28 got through in the end. Many of them through injuries or accidents or things like that. But and the pressure is put upon you, so you get quite a few that will ring the bell, sort of thing. They have to put you through quite a ringer of a test, I suppose, to see what you'll take. And then once you get that, then you might have been accepted into the SAS. However, you've still got about 16 months of specialist courses to do before you're deployed to a squadron. So I was deployed to an operational squadron known as Air Ops. So jumping out of planes, free fall parachuting with packs and oxygen and that sort of stuff. That was your daily job. It seems funny looking back and think that's actually your job, but to deploy to an area, to be able to have that capability of jumping out of a plane, getting to a location, and then the ground skills of soldiering is what we do.
Mm.
Yeah.
Looking at that photo as the parent, I'm be pleased that your boys didn't follow that footsteps and that they're doing the videography and the snowboarding and the
Yeah. And look, I was in when it was a relatively quiet time too. So my hat goes off to a lot of the guys that have been in some pretty serious conflicts, and definitely that hoping that they can carry on and be resilient in their mindset and be able to deal with those problems of PTSD and things that arise. We all have our things that sort of come up from time to time, but that knowing that there's help there, when you have to do tasks that nobody should probably have to do, it's good to know that you've got support when you come back, so you can effectively re-civilianize yourself. I had a lot of civilian friends when I was in. We were encouraged to, depending on what with a counter-terrorism unit, there's times there where you don't socialise with your military mates out of work, and I had quite a few civilian friends. So while some of them knew what I'd done, they also knew that it wasn't something that they publicly spoke about. They just treated me like any mate with any job, and it was really good to have that relatability with civilians, which a lot of soldiers can struggle with, that getting out and you know, as a highly trained soldier, and then you might have some 17-year-old guy who's still got stubble on his face telling you what to do. That would be hard for a seasoned soldier to take, that subordinate role. So some of them struggle with that. Yeah. This shot was taken in New Guinea. We just finished a couple of exercises up there, up around Rabaul. This was shortly before the volcano erupted. Actually, I've got another photograph in my album somewhere where we've taken a photograph on the side of a mountain that is no longer there. It erupted about 12 months after we left, and the mountain is no longer there. Yeah.
That's you on the left there, then, is it?
Yes, it is. Yeah. And
wow.
Yeah.
Looks quite modern. Okay, tell us about this one.
Yeah, so that's doing a mountain warfare course. That was up around Kosciuszko, where we go up and do military tactics in snow and ice. So a funny story, actually. I think of it now. The guy I was telling you about, Gary, who had the accident where he caught fire in the riverbed, that's him sitting down there looking just slightly right of centre, looking up towards the camera. Yeah. Sorry, on the left. So left of centre, standing up there with his gloves up near his face. You can probably notice a bit of a glow of a slight reddish colour. Don't know if it comes up on camera. Yeah, he just done a big face plant and skied off the edge of a snow cornice and fell about 3 or 4 meters and face planted in the snow. So I think he's got a broken nose there. And yeah, we were skiing through a blizzard, so it was like, hey, we're just going to have to pull him behind these rocks and get a bit of medical attention to Gary, because he was covered in blood. He's a bit accident prone, as I mentioned earlier.
He really has. So been through the walls, that one.
Yeah. He got out of the military and became a curtain salesman. As you do. So if anyone needs a nice curtain for the house, Gary's your man. Yeah.
A little bit less dangerous, poor Gary.
Yeah.
He provides you with lots of good stories, though. Bless his heart.
Yeah, he does. Yeah. His expense, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a shot there that I don't have to blacken out the faces on that one. That's a role that you do in a unit every so often. You get rotated through a counter-terrorism team, and you generally roll for about 16 months. And I don't know if you can, that's sort of me on the right-hand side there. Yeah.
Standing up.
I've had a couple of people. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I've had a couple of people that sort of know my posture, and they go, "Is that you?" And it's like, I don't know how you picked it, but yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's pretty well sort of stock standard, isn't it? You know, the weapons now have probably changed these days. That would have been taken in 1989. Yeah, that image. Yeah.
Oh, and look at the equipment then. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. It's it is funny looking back at it and thinking that's part of your life. Yeah.
Can you imagine what they're doing to protect the country these days?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And a lot goes unnoticed to a fair degree. And then when I got out of the regiment in 1994, I headed to the top end of the Northern Territory, and I started tour guiding and working with Parks and Wildlife, doing my studies in lands, parks and wildlife, and then work for parks. But I signed back up to the reserves after 3 years of being a civilian, and my patrol members, this is a unit called Norforce. It was formed by the Australian SAS after Vietnam, so that we had the capability of utilising the Indigenous men out through communities of like Arnhem Land and the Goulburn Islands and the Tiwis, and it was far east of sort of Yirrkala, Larrakia, Mobrand, Darwin. But I was the only what they refer to as Bullander or white fella in my patrol, and all the other soldiers there from all different. There's one fella there from Gumbalanya, Yirrkala, so right across the top end. Soldiers come in and they learn, the Indigenous come in, the men, and they're able to learn bushcrafting and survival skills and military tactics, infantry minor tactics. And then we go out and do patrols, and we keep an eye out for illegal fisheries and potentially border issues. If we have potentially illegal immigrants coming ashore, these guys know their country like the back of their hand, and there's nothing really moves out there without them noticing that the tyre prints on that car it's not a Toyota troop carrier, that's something different, and so they're pretty quick to pick up on something that's not right. So that was a real privilege to serve in Norforce as well, and be able to spend that time out on country with these Melbourne go hunting and learning about that connection to those traditional foods and and what it means to their culture.
Yeah, I know the teaching backwards and forwards. You're learning from them, and they're learning from you. That'd
Oh,
be
very much so.
what a
Yeah,
team. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else that you want to see? I think that was all on that page.
Yeah, I think it's probably. Oh, there's probably one image I might have sent you just after, and it just
Yeah. Let me find that one. I'll bring that up.
it popped up as an interesting thought because the the TV series that some of you may know about from the Northern Hemisphere called Alone, that is about to air for the first season, filmed in Australia, and a friend of mine who I done my survival instructors course with, a guy called Mike. His name will come up in it. As he was in series 1, it's just been announced of who was on it, so it's sort of no longer a secret as to who was on there. But I'd say keep an eye out for Mike. I reckon he'll do well. Yeah, I don't know the outcome.
Wow, that's awesome.
He's a very good soldier and very good with his bush skills.
We've got a question from Andrew. While I look for that next slide, what would the top 5 most common medical emergencies or problems you'd find in the bush, and how would you deal with them?
I think sorry, I'm a bit tickle. I think the idea of preparation has got a lot to do with, and especially in that field of sort of the self-reliance and knowing that you've got not just your grab bag, but your grab box and your contingency plan. It's some of the things that you would put in there that if you're caught without them, things could go pretty seriously, like your potential painkillers and your antibiotics and things that are going to, it's very hard to find really good, reliable plants that will absolutely get rid of an ulcerated sore that might have been formed from stabbing yourself with a branch or something. Like out in the central desert, mulga is a classic. If you get yourself a decent scratch with or cut with mulga bush, it can become very septic very quick, and there's very difficult one to deal with. So I think definitely getting yourself a serious cut and being able to keep it clean would be a big issue. Finding suitable painkillers when you might have an issue, whether it's a serious toothache or something like that. So having painkillers of some form, whether it's even cloves, if that's what you've got, that's far better than not having anything for sure. That would be a horrible place to be in. Snake bite might surprise you to a degree. If I could only take one thing bush in the medical side of things, it probably would be a decent bandage like that you would use for a snake bite bandage. Now, I'm not paranoid about snakes at all. I've had a lot to do with them. I used to do reptile relocation work in Perth. And so I guess I understand the characteristics of snakes probably a bit better than most, but I'm certainly no expert. There's a lot of very, very educated people out there. But I'm not that nervous about snakes. If I've got a good bandage, even if I didn't get to a medical centre, putting on a good bandage, staying still, they're the two key things, constrict it, stay still. And then providing I've got water to continue to consume and I'm in an element of shade, then I'd feel pretty good with a snake bite. I'd weather it out if need be. That's not my recommendation. Obviously, get a call out and get help to come to you is the key thing there. Don't try to walk 300 meters to your car to go and get help, because that 300 meters without a bandage is going to be the difference between you getting out with a heartbeat or not. It's a lymphatic system, so you got to stay still. Other injuries, I'd hate to have a serious eye injury. It's not one that would be easy to treat out there. So eyes, teeth, a serious cut, definitely anything femoral, and you've really got to think, the further you are from civilization, the more you've got to think about every decision you make. If you've got a nice sharp knife that you're using for whittling or bushcrafting skills, and you're lax with your protocol on the use of those, and you do yourself a serious cut to an artery or femoral artery around your groin, that could well be it. Yeah, you could bleed out very quickly within a minute or two with a serious thing. So absolutely being strict on your protocol about knife use and making sure things are back in scabbards and things and not leaving blades exposed. And the further you get from society, the more you got to think about your own personal risk assessment. It's a big one. It's a good question about the medical side of things. Yeah.
Yeah,
Any
really
other ones?
great answer.
Yeah. Any other ones come to mind that that you had thought of, Andrew?
Yeah, there is another one. As far as like introduced animals and vegetation, do you find that some introduced animals have been beneficial, or are they all a pest, or the same for vegetation?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm more than happy to tuck into a few cane toad legs. Not many people probably do, but we're not. It sounds funny. I'm just going. We're not quite privileged to have big cane toads down here in southeast Queensland. We've got some that are this sort of size, but you've got to go and probably harvest about a half a dozen to get a half decent sort of meal. But up the Whitsundays way, they're thumpers up there. I reckon you could get a couple of drumsticks off the back legs, and that's obviously they have the Bufo marinus cane toad. It has its toxins behind its nape, the back of its neck, and that's obviously the glands where it will exclude the Bufo toxin. But yeah, if you were to quickly and humanely, I'm not out to make any animal suffer, but you humanely dispatch it and take the drumsticks off the back. They're surprising. They're like small quail drumsticks, and they cook up okay. They're a little bit chewy, but we all know what they taste like.
Chicken.
Yeah.
That's
If you had a bit of taco mix or something like that, or even just a little bit of some of your bush tucker plants that have got a little bit more of a bite to them, you could probably spice up something and make I don't think I'll be any master chef, but I could make it edible. Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. Now I did find those clips that you sent through. So let's take a look, shall we?
Yeah, I'm not sure which one will come up first. It might be either the father and son one or a bloke's
I've got
event.
the soap bush plant.
Oh yeah, this one's got a bit of a story to it. Like, I'm not sure whether you guys are into TikTok, but my boys being into their technology said, "Hey, Dad, with your survival skills, why don't you put a few things up on TikTok?" Here's me thinking I'd have to come up with some sort of fancy dance or something. But I'd been posting for a couple of weeks, just putting different clips up of things I do, fire lighting and things like that. And I put a plant up that's common up here, and you'll probably find it down in New South Wales there, a plant called Alphatonia excelsa, commonly known as soap bush. So you pick the new leaves of it, you rip it up and add a bit of water to it. And I made a lather up. And it was on Father's Day a couple of years ago that one of my boys said, "Dad, you put a post up this morning?" I said, "Yeah, mate, yeah, I just done the soap bush." And he goes, "Yeah, you might want to have a look at the numbers on that one." And I think by 10 o'clock that night, it had 1 million views. And I think it's sitting at like 3.3 million views. And I'm going, I probably would have done a proper post and told him a bit more if I knew it was going to get the views, but that's how algorithms work. I guess I can't figure it out. But yeah, have a look at that one if you like. Just a quick clip on.
Here it is. That's awesome. Here we go.
These leaves into as small pieces as possible.
Can you hear that all right?
Yeah. Put them into the palm of our hands. You can see it there. Add a bit of water. Hopefully water's a lot. That's off my push bike, so it jets out a heap of water. Yeah. You start working it into a lather. And as you can see, you end up with quite a lathery substance. It's really good for getting in amongst your cuts and scratches that you may have picked up as you've been pushing through the Aussie bush. Yeah, so not a bad use of a plant, commonly called soap bush or Alphatonia. Good one. Cheers, guys.
Brilliant.
So the first thing we do.
That's so good. Okay, and then I've got the next one is of the women's group. Now let's see if I can start this one from the beginning because it's been playing. So I don't know how to make it start from the beginning. Let's if I go back to go back to here my video clips and click it again. And it'll bring it up. Okay. I don't have the volume. Hang on, volume.
than a week before I conduct my next Women's Survival and Bushcraft Fundamentals. Have a listen to what some of the ladies have said in the past.
Everyone needs to know this. It should be stuff for
Yeah, self-defense awareness. It's just amazing.
It's just lovely to be around such lovely people.
We not only connect back to nature, but we look at water, shelter, fire, food, rope skills, knife skills.
One, getting in nature and being able to concentrate on one thing at a time.
Just feeling super empowered with the skills.
Also making fire was incredible, and I loved your self-defense.
It has been powerful, empowering and phenomenal.
Well, good morning to the ladies on the Sunshine Coast.
There
It's
we
less than a
are.
week before I conduct my next
Very good.
Women's Survival and Bushcraft Fundamentals. Have a listen to what some of the ladies have said.
Just pause it there. So good. So you can find Rick on Instagram. Maybe Rick, just type in the chat some of your connections so people can click through.
Yeah, I'll see if I can
So he's everywhere. He's on Instagram, he's on TikTok, he's got a website, Rick J Petersen.
yeah, not sure where I type in here, Kelly.
Where it says chat down the bottom, if you can type in the chat. Now I have been writing Petersen with an all E's, but is it Petersen with an O?
That's an interesting story. I can't say a chat word there. However, it is Rick J Petersen. When I put in for a extract from my birth certificate when I was joining the army at 17, it came back with a misspelling and having spelling it as Peterson. And I was about to join the army in about a week's time, and I thought, I haven't got time to send it back and say that they've made a mistake. So I'm Rick Petersen. My wife is Peterson because we got married while I was still in the military. And it's like, so there's a glitch in the family tree. My boys are both Peterson, but I went through the military as son, but I'm technically Rick Petersen. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. So that's an easy distinction.
Yeah, so my personal page is Rick John Peterson. And then all my business is correct as Rick Petersen, but my military medals and things, they're Peterson. So it's a bit of a kink in the family tree. Yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic. And so tell us, you've got some courses coming up. You want to give yourself a plug?
Yeah. We've got most of April. I pretty well dedicated a month to them. And my events normally started off running the father and son, I guess because of my background and knowing the importance, and I wanted to see fathers really connect with their sons to set up that intergenerational thing into the future where the boys remember going out bush with their dads and things, So that's, when's the father and son one? That is starting off with the first one, actually going from the end of March into April. It's the first time I've run a family event. So I'm looking to have 3 families with children down to about the age of 6 through to adults, and just going out as 3 families camping around the bush camp where we are, and just going out each day learning the different skills of water, shelter, fire, food, rescue, lots of rope skills, knife skills, celestial orientation of the night sky. That's pretty fundamental in most of them, but I love working with the younger kids and having some good quirky stuff that I do with rope tricks and a few other things, and having lantern stalks at night. Just let it have a lot of fun too. It's not all about you've got to be prepared in case something goes wrong. It's like a good healthy balance between having fun and learning good skills, and developing that love for being out bush. So the family one is the first one. Then the Bloke's Dirty Dozen, there's probably a video clip of that one too. That's typically where I'll get a dozen men and take them out. And there's normally a few interesting things thrown into that one, depending on who I bring along to do a bit of additional work. But it's a pretty profound weekend. It's got physicality to it. It's not super hard or out of anyone's reach, but there's physicality to it. Each day starts with elements of either self-defense or Filipino stick fighting. There's any number of things I'll put into it. You could be doing anything from lock picking in and amongst it to different scenarios I throw in there. Get some good, interesting people come along that I'll have come along and talk about aspects that make you go away going, wow, how grateful am I for what I am gifted with in the healthy body, and seeing what other people can achieve with far less. Yeah. So yeah, there's a Bloke's Dirty Dozen. It's a good, powerful one. A lot of blokes talking about how to be good men too. That's what it's about. The women's event is after that. That one goes from the 13th to the 16th. You probably had a bit of a snippet of that one. And the father and son is the last one I run for the end of the month, which is the 20th through to the 23rd. And that's, yeah, a lot of good bonding skills with the fathers and sons, and setting up some challenges and things where, yeah, they get to go out and spend that one-on-one time, yeah, working their skills together.
Brilliant. That's so good. There's a little testimonial in the chat from LT who said, my friend Veronica from the Witchetty Grub Bush Food Nursery here on the sunny coast has participated in the women's retreat and highly recommends them.
Oh, lovely.
So good.
And who was that from? Was that from Veronica?
No, Veronica's friend LT, who's in the chat.
Yes. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Lovely. Yeah, Veronica's a big part of the women's event. I get to show off some of her expertise as well. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, that's awesome. So we will put the links. This will go into on my YouTube channel, and I'll send it to you, Rick, and we'll put your links with this so that people can find you easily. And if there's anyone that doesn't have any more questions, we will wrap up tonight. But we're so been really thrilled and blessed by all your stories and what we've learned. It's just been an awesome night. So
thank you. Thank you for your kind words.
It's been wonderful.
Rick, really enjoyed that. Very informative and
Thanks,
entertaining.
mate. Thank you.
So good.
I'll catch you around a campfire sometime.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And so just in parting, because it is Valentine's Day, just want to leave you with a thought that I posted in my group today, and want to share that with you all now. It says, we tend to forget the happiness doesn't come as a result of getting something we don't have, but rather of recognizing and appreciating what we do have. Spread love to those around you. Remember that not only today, but each day you can make a difference in someone else's life. You don't need an excuse or a special day to show someone you care. So happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Let's share love and connectedness today and always, not just to those who you love, but love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use and persecute you, said Jesus. And so thanks everyone for joining us. And we'll look forward to seeing you next Tuesday at the same time.
Lovely. Thank you.
See you, Rick.
Cheers, guys.